I'm on?
You're on.
Okay, I'm going to try this again. My last two videos came out pretty bad, so I apologize. I'm trying to get better technology going. So I am going to do the sterile technique station. I'm going to set the timer for 30 minutes. So that means I have to go. I have a little timer here and I just set it for 30 minutes. So I'm going to come in and they're going to read me their little spiel, and then I'm going to get the S-bar and I'm supposed to read it and figure out what I'm supposed to be doing. So S-bar, I can kind of quickly show it to you. It's kind of hard to show it because you're going to be backwards. I had the camera a different way before, so I got to figure all that out, but I'll just read it. So this is actually up on the blackboard. It's the Sally Field one. It's the sterile technique station S-bar for Sally Field. Her date of birth is 1/21/19, so I don't have to read all that. She was admitted yesterday for surgical debridement, non-healing venous stasis ulcer. Her background, hyperthyroidism, she's diabetic. She had a myocardial infarction a year ago. They put in a PICC line 5 days ago for IV antibiotics. She's awake, alert, and oriented. She had some nausea. She's been medicated for it. She's feeling better. She's had some water. Out of bed to chair with assistance. She feels weak and off-balanced. When she was in the PACU, she was having trouble voiding, so they had to start doing intermittent catheterizations. Her last void was for 300, and her post-void residual is 50. They don't give you a time on that. I'm going, this particular scenario, I do believe it's supposed to be 0,800. So but I don't know, they said her last void was 300 milliliters, but I don't know when that was. So okay, the next sentence, patient has a wound to her left lower extremity. The dressing was changed by the surgical physician at 2000 yesterday. The wound bed, so she hasn't had her dressing changed since yesterday. The wound bed looks red with no granulation, no odor. The dressing is dry and intact, and they talk about her pain level. And they also talk about her PICC in the right upper arm. The PICC was changed yesterday. That's key because most places it's pretty standard that you change the PICC every 72 hours. So it's probably not the PICC. I know that already without even going any further. And I know that I already know from reading this that it's probably the wound, because wounds are usually, in these scenarios, are usually changed every day or every 12 hours. But I still need to know when the last time she voided, what time that was. So then it gives me this description of what her wound looks like. Okay, so now I need to go to the orders. I want to look for her wound order, her PICC dressing change order, and her straight cath order. So it says that the PICC line needs to be changed every 3 days, so I know that I'm good with that. The wound needs to be changed every 12 hours. So I'm pretty sure at this point it's the wound, but I still need to double check the urine. The wound order, it's always a good idea just to make sure that the order is what you think it is. Cleanse wound with normal saline, pack, 4x4 gauze, cover with, yep, so the wound order is what they told us it would be in the study guide. Intermittent catheterization using sterile technique if post-void bladder scan estimates greater than 200 milliliters, or if patient is unable to void in 6 hours. So her last post-void residual, it says, was 50 milliliters. So I know that that's good, but I still need to know how many hours it's been since she's voided. So then they give you some laboratory reports, her vital signs, her last CBC, her intake and output for today and yesterday. So they put that at 0,800. She drank 100 milliliters of water. She put out 300 milliliters of urine, and her post-void bladder scan was 50. So if we're going with that at 0,800 now, then she does not need to be catheterized because she just went to the bathroom, and it said to only, in the order says, if the post-void bladder scan is greater than 200, and hers was 50. So I know that it's not that. So I know that for this particular scenario, it's got to be the wound. So the next thing that I need to do is they do have a little sheet, and you just, I believe, just pick the one that you're supposed to do. If you can see this. So the wound. So I'm picking the wound. I give this back to the CE, and she lets me know if I'm correct or not and if I can continue. So I'm going to hope that she said that you're correct and you can continue. My next step, I believe, would then be to get the mannequin and to get it set up the way that I want it. At that point, it's as if you're starting in the room. So before you do anything else, you need to gel your hands. So I'm gelling my hands. I need to set up my supplies. I try to, I'm right-handed, so I try to keep the wound to my dominant hand with the trash kind of at my right hip, so that way when I take off the dirty dressing, I can put everything right into the trash. And then I set things up in the order that I'm going to use them, the closest to me to the furthest away. So the first thing I'm going to use, I put the sterile gloves way kind of out of the way, so I don't, because otherwise I don't have enough space. But then, with that exception, then I go with everything I'm going to use in order. So the boat, the 4x4, the ABD pad. I put my sterile gloves over to the side because I just want those out of the way because I can't have them right here because then I have not enough room. And then I have my tape, I have saline, and I do need a pen. I don't think I have a pen, but I have a marker. Forgot to grab a pen. Okay, so the first thing that I need to do, I have my stuff set up, I clean my hands, and before I get going, I need to ID the patient. So I know that I kind of touched that because I was setting things up, but before you actually touch the patient when you start this, you're supposed to ID them. Wash your hands and ID them before you do anything else. Oh, I have a pen now, thank you. Okay, so I need to find where the ID bracelet is on this person. So I have Sally Field, date of birth 1/21/1961, date of birth 1/21/1961, medical record 26532, medical record 26532. Okay, so now I know that I have the right patient. So to start, I need some regular non-sterile gloves. I am going to open everything. I actually prefer to take the dressing off and clean and then open everything, but then I wasn't sure if we had, someone had said, because in the demonstration they do it this way first on the videos, and someone had said that it's because you don't want to leave the patient with an open exposed wound for any longer than you have to, because it could be distressing to them. So in theory, I guess it's better to open all your sterile stuff here first, and then take off the dressing. That's why you wouldn't want to take off the dressing first. I actually asked at the message center and they told me that it didn't matter, but I'm going to stick to the way they do it in the videos. Okay, because you get different answers from different people there. Okay. So now I'm ready to take off this dressing very carefully. And you're going to remember to look for drainage. So I'm taking off my gloves. I'm going to gel my hands. I'm trying to be careful not to cross over my sterile field. So now this is the part that always gets me, and I got to make sure I do it right. So I need to now pour the saline in, because once I put my sterile gloves on, I can't do this. This is the part I always forget. I put my sterile gloves on, then I realize I never poured the saline. All right. And now I'm going to come over to the other side. You're going to probably lose me for a minute. I'm going to put my sterile gloves on. And like I said, there's just not enough room. I'm still here. I'm just over in the corner putting on my gloves. I'm sorry that you can't see how I'm doing that, but there's just not enough space in the video, on the camera. Okay, so now I'm sterile. I need to clean the wound. I'm going to take my first gauze pad. I'm gonna clean away. And I'm kind of just turning at the waist and dropping that into the trash. So it hasn't even been 10 minutes since the timer started, so I kind of feel like with these sterile stations you have a lot of time, so you can kind of relax and just try to take your time and make sure you don't forget anything. It's a different story with the medication station. Okay, I'm going to wave towards me, and then down the center. Alright, and now I need to open it up. I started to do that before and realized I didn't really need to. And I find with these is that you want it to be wet but not like dripping, but if it's not wet, you kind of have to have the right level of wetness to do this, because you don't want it too wet, but if it's too dry, then the little frayed edges are much harder to get in there. That's what I find anyway. The little frays come out more when it's too dry. But when it's too wet, then you don't want it like dripping all over the place either when you're going to move it. It shouldn't be like dripping all over your table. It just kind of takes practice, I find, to get the right, I mean, it's kind of probably what works for you too. So I like to open it up to 2-ply, then I scrunch it. I tried to just practice doing it so that I kind of shape it into the wound in my hand. I know the shape of the wound in the palm of my hand, almost like I'm visualizing that wound, but in my hand. It's kind of like a modified parachute, I guess, that I do. That's what somebody else called it. I don't know. And then so I get it kind of close to the shape of the wound, and then I fold in the 3 corners, and then I very carefully just place it right in there. I always kind of put it in and take a deep breath, because you kind of want to get it so that when you let go, it's going to stay. And then I just unfold the corners. There's really no right or wrong way to do this, as long as you do it without touching the edges and it looks good after. I just practiced all the different methods, and this is the one that's worked for me. I don't know if you can see, but this actually came out good. I find it's just really a fluky thing. Sometimes I do it and it comes out terrible. Other times I get it right off the bat. Of course, when I test, it's going to be one of those terrible ones. But that actually worked pretty well. Okay, so I'm going to take my 2x2. Try to do that quick, because really you don't need them to be staring at it for too long. They'll tell you if they want to come over and look closer. So now I have it covered. I can take off my gloves, wash my hands, kind of move all this out of the way. Tape. I usually just take 2 pieces and tape each top and bottom. Find my marker and put the date and the time and the initials. And again, it's 0800, so that's what I'm going to put, because that's what time it's supposed to be. My initials. I just think for this, the tape piece, you just want to, you don't want to write it on the patient, and you also don't want to take the tape off and stick it on the table and write on it and then stick it on, because there could potentially be pathogens on the table that then you're sticking onto the patient. So you just don't want to do it those 2 ways. Okay. And then I have to write my note. So, so at 0800, dressing changed to, and this is where I like to actually write exactly what they wrote here, so I don't put the wrong right or the wrong left. I mean, this is too much on the line here to screw up over something so silly. So dressing changed to left. Actually, you have to describe what kind of a wound it is. Surgical wound, is it, what kind of a wound? So this is a non-healing venous stachys ulcer. So dressing changed to non-healing venous stachys ulcer on her left lower extremity. Two non-healing venous ulcer of left lower extremity per orders. So irregularly shaped wound with beefy red granulated tissue and bone present. There's bone present in this wound. Bone present. Surrounding skin was intact with no redness. We have to document on drainage, so no drainage. This wound had no drainage. And then I believe we have to describe the wound that we did. So I believe I hit everything. I said what kind of wound it is. I said where it was. I described the wound. I described the surrounding tissue, and I talked about whether or not there was drainage or not. So now we need to talk about, it says something about the dressing. So cleansed wound with sterile normal saline, packed with loosely fluffed 4x4 dressing, covered with sterile 4x4 gauze and sterile ABD pad. Labeled with date, time, and initials. I'll probably have to write that. That part's not a critical element, but then in just something like dressing, change, I kind of already said this in the beginning, per MD orders using sterile technique. And then at this point, I probably would read it over just to make sure. I believe I hit all the critical elements in my note. So at this point, I would still have 15 minutes left. So I would give this to the CE, and I would tell her that I'm all set, and she would read it and let me know whether I've passed or not. Thank you. Done. Somebody must have been logged in because I heard beeping.
Yes, Sherry Howell says, "You go, girl."